Okay, can you hear me all right? So, hello everybody, welcome. And I'm Davin, and I'm a game development instructor at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu's Academy for Creative Media. When I assign my class their final project with the only formal instruction being to make a video game that's respectable in less than a semester's worth of time, I had no idea what the outcome would be. Since video game development incorporates all of the traditional arts with math, science, and engineering, I was happy to learn that the entire class decided to pool all of their various talents together and form their own virtual studio. They work remotely, and I think in the end, they created a game that even surprised themselves. So I would like to introduce to you three of the leaders of the teams, the various teams of the group. And Michelle, do you wanna go?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Zheng. I was the project manager of this project, as well as a writer, and I also helped with just organization of the team. You can go ahead and go next, Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan Ballesteros. I was the head programmer, editor, and item artist.
Hey, hi, I'm Britney Lindo. I was the head artist, writer, and composer for this game.
Very good. Thank you for your intros. So without further ado, I present to you University of Hawaii West Oahu's game design and development final project and the process that it took to make it.
Can you guys see the screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the title of our game is called Dating and Delivery. And before we begin, we would like to share a quick video that showcases how the gameplay works as well as what you'll see inside the game. So we did our introductions earlier, but our little mini studio that we came up with in class is also known as 12% Studios. We came up with this name as we were working together, and we wanted something that seemed fitting for all of us. So here's our titles again. But also, besides the three of us here, we had an awesome team of colleagues and classmates that helped bring this game to life. Each of them are amazing writers, artists, and coders that are all just college students. So a big shout out to them because this game wouldn't be possible without them as well. So now we're going to get into the main backstory of the process. And a little fun fact about our little studio is that some of us have never met in person at all. So the question becomes, how did you develop a game then? We all met in CM 342 in spring 2021 with one goal, as Davin said earlier, to create a game by the end of the semester. And at the end of the semester, we were at a pretty good place, but it wasn't a full game. So we took it outside of the class because as each of us developed our skills in coding, writing, and art, everything kept inspiring each other. As the coding improved, we were able to do more and more things with the writing, and the writing just fed into more and more creativity with the art, and the art just inspired more and more in the cycle. So we took this project after the semester ended, and we worked on it during the summer, and it's just been a work in progress ever since. It's still getting updates. Jordan and all of us are still constantly working on it, and we're very proud to where it is right now. Our primary communication method throughout this whole process was via Discord, a communication app, where we can organize different channels and we can deviate different tasks and by different rooms. So you can see on screen we have little panels, areas of group management, game art, assets, writer's room, coding, music hall, as well as like sending each other the final assets of things. Besides the work of everything, we also just use the Discord to also just hang out after class at night, just to talk and just hang out with each other. So you might be wondering, what is a dating game? What is a dating sim and why? We couldn't really find a formal definition, but Wikipedia defines dating sims as a video game subgenre of simulation games with romantic elements. Like Davin said earlier, we were just prompted, come up with a game. And in that class, we partnered up and created different game pitches. We were all coming up with different ideas. We said top-down RPGs, gotcha games, platformers, first-person shooters, etc. We all just, we were all gamers at heart. So coming up with different games that we were all passionate about was not very difficult. But then we thought, what is codable? What can we do with our expertise and our experience? What can we do in 3 months' time? Then one of our colleagues came up with the idea of a dating sim. Dating sims are like visual novels, but with choice. So like a digital version of a choose your own adventure game, but with romantic elements as well. And dating sims and simulation games have been very popular nowadays, from internet culture as well as streamer and influencer culture. And at the time of creating this, we were all still in the middle of the pandemic, and simulation games such as dating sims provided escapism, the opportunity to meet someone new, to talk to someone different, to try something new. And some examples of similar games we drew inspiration from was Monster Prom, Stardew Valley, and others. So the main reason why we chose this simulation game was because the main character, or the player character who you would be playing as, is meant to be a stand-in for you. And you can see yourself in those shoes as you make your decisions navigating across this world. Now we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about our dating game. So the purpose of the game, you have a goal, you defeat all the monsters, get this character, yada yada. Our goal for this game was to gain the affection of one of the 4 eligible monsters and go on a date with them. At every interaction you have with them, you will gain a certain amount of affection points, and at the end of a positive interaction with them, you'll be up a certain amount of affection points. And once you gain affection points, you're going to continue with story advancements. And you might think, okay, easy, I'll just talk to the same monster over and over again, talk to them until they fall in love with me. However, it's not as easy as you think, because we implemented a day-night cycle. You have a certain amount of time slots where you can only meet certain characters at certain times. For example, we have a vampire character, and you can only talk to her at night. So you have to plan wisely about how to spend your time during each of the days. So we have a morning, noon, evening time. How well do you plan your time to meet these certain monsters? And it's not just about talking. We also have gift giving, shopping, and mini game and hangout sessions. So you can get to know the monsters and figure out, who do you want to get to know better, even more in a romantic sense, and also just, hang out and maybe just learn more about. So here are a few screenshots from different games that we drew inspiration from. And aesthetically followed in the footsteps of these anime-style games because they were cutesy, simple and charming, and you can tell a lot by the character just by their design and how they look. So now I'm gonna throw it over to Britney about the art behind it.
Right, thanks, Michelle. So we're starting with the sketch conceptuals. We had a lot of artists that had experience with digital art, so we didn't start off with traditional paper and pencil, and we jumped right into digital programs like Photoshop, Paint Tool Sign. And this is an important step since we need to figure out how we want our game to look like. What do we want our logos to be? What kind of icons? What our UI? Just everything to plan out from the very base bones to the final product. And before that, we had to use placeholders, as you see on the bottom right, to figure out how we had to size the characters. Do we want portraits? Do we want full size, minimal size? Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is some examples of our item art here. So each of our monsters run a specific shop. And we had to think, what items will they sell? Like the bartender, the baker, the makeup artist. These are just samples of some items that we came up with in a variety of styles, pixel to realism. And as you can see from the art styles, they vary between them. The ones on the left are using the mini games, while items on the right were integral to the story experience. Next slide, please. And then here we have some early sketches of the backgrounds. We had to figure out how to lay down the framework. We figured out where we're going to place the chairs, where we're going to place the monster. How is this space going to look like? Since the dating sim is very visual, we need to figure out what color palettes, the items, furniture, just to make the world breathe and come to life. This gave us a rough idea for some of our finished pieces that you'll see in the next slide, which is right here. So here's some background art rendered for the different locations on the map. We have the bakery, the bookstore, Rosie's house, as well as the post office. So each location is relevant to our game in either the main story location or a side location for mini games and hangout events. And next slide. So then we also have early versions of the map. So this is actually an inspiration of a real place called Inokashira in Japan. And these are some of our earliest sketches. We were planning out the town, like a little hub area. It was a very messy layout. And then we had to do an overlay of where the building should go. So every step of the way, we had to kind of double check ourselves to make sure, do we want this here? Do we want this character here? Do we really need this place or not? Is this interactable? Is it not? Next. And then here we have our final version. So the map in layman's terms is essentially our main hub and where you go next. This is the main screen that players will always see when you transition from one scene to the next. This is the scene that you will always see, whether you're going to visit a monster, go on a hangout, maybe play a mini game. This all starts here. And if you go to our next slide. Welcome to our reject gallery. These are the characters that did not, unfortunately, make it into our game. So before you meet our actual cast, this is our selection of rejects. They were rejected due to some resembling other monsters. Some didn't quite fit the theme or story we were going to use moving forward. And others made it far, but ultimately got cut off in favor of monsters that would be more recognizable, like the vampire, or like the spider lady who almost made it, but not quite. So each of them had different designs, but none of them made it past the sketch phase after the voting and vetoes. But in the next slide, I'll introduce you to our very first monster that made it in. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to Rosie Maple. So Rosie actually was not supposed to be in this game, but we all fell in love with her design on the top left. And each artist started building on what would she be? What kind of moth is she? Is she a Rosie Maple moth? Is she a poodle moth? But she is not a romanceable option in this game. Instead, she is your very best friend, who is your tutorial. She'll tell you around the town. She'll tell you how you're doing with all the other monsters. And she was actually originally based off of Mothman, which Michelle did have her as a character to write for. So do you want to talk about her a little bit?
Yeah, I can totally talk about Rosie. So I was the main character writer for Rosie Maple. And it was really important when I was developing her character that she wasn't too annoying. As Brittany stated earlier, she was a tutorial character. And if you played any games before, before you go exploring, you need to learn the basics of how to interact with things. What can you interact with? And I wanted Rosie to be a welcoming arms when you enter this monster world. So she's not very intimidating. She's a moth, but she's still fuzzy and everything. So that's the main thing when I was trying to write for Rosie, just to, she's your best friend, you know, that's the way I would word it.
Okay, and meet our cast. So these are the monsters that made it through and are in our actual game. We have Isaac Underdark. He is the Beholder bookshop keeper with his sister Iris Underdark, a Cyclops makeup artist. Shannon Wolf, he is our werewolf baker, and Natalie Julep, our vampire bartender. As you can see from the reject gallery, we essentially started out with 8 characters with 4 per gender. However, due to time constraints and deliberating our actual time, ability, we had to narrow it down to only 2 per gender in order to make this game actually a feasible play state. So in our next slide, we have our character sheets. So before we actually started narrowing down, we made each character a character sheet that had their schedules in the game, their end goals, their names, biography, the time the shop would be open, when you could talk to them. It was important to have this template so we could see for ourselves and also use the baseline for every person working this game. From the coder to the artist to the writer, we all had to have access and also approve of each stage of these characters, since we all had a hand in bringing these characters to life. The coders would decide how they would talk and act, the artists would decide their theming and what they would look like, and the writers had to write out their personality that the player would eventually fall in love with. At the time of development, we couldn't realistically include everything in the sheets, so we had what we had and voted on who would be in the game and what features would be added. As you can see from Natalie and Isaac, they all had differing information that made it to the game or were cut out. And now I'm going to pass it over back to Michelle, and she will talk to you about the writing.
Thank you very much, Brittany. All right, now that you got a little taste of the characters, we're going to talk a little bit about the writing process behind them. During that initial class discussion, we had a general understanding of the personalities of the characters, but we didn't know the fine details. We know that each of the characters would be given a certain difficulty level. We didn't want every character to be easy. So, you know, you would have to make more difficult choices depending on which character you're going for. For example, for our easy route is Shannon, who is our werewolf. You know, he's like a puppy dog. Puppy dogs are easy to interact with. Versus our difficult character, which was Iris, who is a beholder, who, you know, traditionally is like a monster. It's very hard to get to know her. And the way we divided up this work was that we luckily had one writer for each of the characters. And the reason why we split it up that way was because we wanted each character to be very distinct from each other. We didn't want it to feel like one person was writing for it all. And I know that in, you know, traditional writing is also one writer would have to write for multiple characters, but we had the luxury and opportunity that each of our writers could tackle their own character, and we were lucky enough that they could choose which one they felt like they were comfortable with or they wanted the challenge on taking on. Because similar to people in real life, sometimes conversations aren't the easiest to navigate through. And, you know, even the simplest response, you think, choosing between one option or 2 options, you know, that can make a huge impact on the game. And as writers started to share their drafts and coders started to advance their skills, we were able to implement very cool conversations. For example, something that wasn't in our original draft developed early on, but later on during the summer, was that our coders were able to do like a repeat function where in the first scene with Rosie, you're allowed to choose which shop you want to visit. And as I mentioned before, Natalie's a vampire. You can't visit her at night, but she shows up as an option. But when you click on Natalie, it'll show up, hey, you can't visit there, it's closed right now, and you can keep clicking on it, and we have a little reward at the end that we'll explain a little bit later, but that's kind of behind our writing process. So the main thing we used to develop these branching dialogues was a website called Mind Map. And everywhere you see a diverging branch is a choice that a player had to make. Now, the player had to make a choice on where to diverge the branch, but the writer also had to think about where that branch would divide and how that would impact the story and how the player experience would continue. And each of the writers tackled it in their own way. Some writers were more dialogue heavy, where they focused in more of the conversation, while some writers chose to focus in more of the actions, and they would show a lot of the character nuances that way. So here's an example of Iris's versus Shannon's. You can see how different they are. And here's just some little finer details about our writing. And we started working more with the details of the story about like exactly what books are available at Isaac's shop, or exactly what items are available at Shannon's bakery. We just had a lot of fun creating these ideas. So here are some few examples of Brittany, who wrote for Isaac's, some of these, the things she wrote. So if Brittany, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure thing. All right, so a lot of this was references from real life, like the cookbook of Hellfire Kitchen by Gorgon Raylene is of Gordon Ramsay. The history book, History of the World, unedited version. The romance book is around to pick up shopkeepers during work hours. It's like a little homage to an anime. The coloring book, colored by the rune systems. Dictionary, spelling for influencers, because let's be real, they all need it, bless their souls. And fantasy book is Dungeons of Dead Knights. Horror book, Silent as the Grave. So everything was kind of an element taken from our real life and then parodied it onto the Isaac's book inventory titles. All of our items also have fun little descriptions, which even though it's not showing here now, it will be prominent in the game. Back to you, Michelle.
Okay, so you saw those little branches earlier, right? But let me introduce you to a little thing, or well, big thing, called Rosie's Post 40 scene. After you've interacted with each of the characters at least once, you'll unlock Rosie's Post 40 scene, where she asks you, did anyone catch your eye? And this is an opportunity, so now that you've met all the characters, you can talk to Rosie about how your interaction went with them. It's kind of like, you know, you check up with, you just went on a date, and then your best friend's checking up on you, like, how did it go? You know, who did catch your eye? And depending on which of the 4 characters that you talk to, depending on if you had a positive, negative, or neutral reaction with them, you'll get different responses. And we as writers had to plan for every single one of those. So I'm not going to do the math right now, but there's 4 characters, and each of them have 3 options. And then within those 3 options, they also have maybe like 1 or 2 options within there. And that's what grew into this like monstrosity right here. And, you know, the reason why we have this, even though it was a lot of work on writers, is because depending on the choices you've made, we want to reward you with different and unique dialogue options. You know, you went through all the work to getting to know this character, you should get a unique response for going through all that work. And this story is not just a one-choice path. You have options, and it should affect the story and affect your gameplay experience with it. So this is what you see on the back end of all the writing. But now what you see on the front end in the game is all you see is this. All you see is this. But now we're going to go into the coding, which you'll see this post 40 scene turns into this. Go ahead, Jordan.
Right. So when it comes to the coding, there was a lot of complicated things that we had to do. And like we've shown earlier, there's a lot of choices that can be made. And even though it seems very, very complicated, usually right in the very middle, if you can see, that's kind of where the previous slide takes place. And you only see one of these blocks in the coding at one time. It wasn't our intention as the coders, but because this is Rosie's Post 40, we kind of unconsciously made the code look like a moth, just a little Easter egg for the viewers out there. Next slide. Now we're going to get into a bit of technical talk, so please bear with us. So we chose Fungus, which is our main hub for coding. And for people that are not too sure about coding, usually if you've seen a movie or something that has coding, usually it's like these green letters that are flying across the screen and somebody is tapping away extremely fast on their keyboard. And while that is one of the most common ways of coding, because of our skills at the time, we chose Fungus because it's a visual style of coding. As you can see on the bottom right, it works with blocks and wires, and so they connect to each other. It's like, here is where you are, and then we move to the next one once you're done with it. And this is the very, very basis of how our coding works. The other reason why we decided to use this program was because Fungus also is very good at specializing in specific game types, and dating sim is one of them. So of course, why not use it? For the people that are having a very difficult time understanding the difference between line code and visual code, imagine line code like a movie script where it shows all the directions on the piece of paper as just words. You have to read through it and understand what's going on. And for some people, that might be difficult to understand. But for visual code, it's like a storyboard where you have the words paired with a picture to give somebody, or the actor in this case, an easier understanding of what is going on. Next slide. So this is where things get a bit confusing to look at. As you can see on the top, we have these very simple things. Like I showed earlier, you have a few blocks on the very top. And it's like, you have very simple scenes where it's a couple interactions with a character. But on the bottom, we have things that are very, very complicated, and the game needs to be tracking so many different things at once. And that's kind of what you see right now. Next slide. So I want to go over this thing we call the Isaac template. As we've introduced earlier, Isaac is our character on the left there. Because Britney wrote for Isaac, she really, really wanted to have Isaac in this game. And so she busted her butt to get all of the writing out for Isaac. And because of that, he was the first character that had everything done for him. All the writing was completely done. And so he kind of led the charge when it came to coding other characters. As you can see on the right-hand side, there's Isaac's code, and underneath it is Natalie's code. You can see that they look very similar, but with like little changes in some of the blocks look like a different color. And that's because we wanted, or what we as the coders did was, Isaac was done. Why not copy and paste and just change around the things that need to be changed around? And that's kind of what we've done. It's a very good way for beginners to understand that you don't need to be writing everything from scratch. You don't need to write a character from the scratch all the time. Take inspiration from one character and move them to the other, with changes, of course. You don't want them to be completely cut and dry. Next slide, please. So now we want to go over this mini game kind of thing that we had in our game. And so why have a mini game? What we wanted to do was we wanted to keep retention. Even though we can make dialogue choices and different story choices, the player might get kind of bored. And so we have this mini game that is a very, very common thing that the player is going to have to go through because of the function. And the idea is that in this mini game, you take some of these icons and you place them in a box and you send them off like a delivery. Of course, our game's name is Dating and Delivery. If we didn't have a delivery system, what's the point? So through this, your player can get some kind of item from it, and it's usually money, or like we've had earlier, we said there's gift giving, and so sometimes you can get lucky and you get a gift for a character that you like, and you can give it to them, and it's like a bonus, and that's kind of what this mini game is meant to be. Next slide. So with all of these things in mind, we have this thing called juiciness. And for the people that do not know juiciness, it's this kind of idea that keeps the player immersed in the game. It keeps them in the mindset that they're not pressing buttons on a controller or pressing buttons on a keyboard or moving a mouse around to click things. It's, I'm in the game and I'm playing as this character. I am the character. And that's kind of this immersion that you have. And so little things make the difference when it comes to immersion. And so we have things like Easter eggs. Like we said earlier, if you visit the bar at night with Natalie, our character on the right, since she's a bartender, you can go in there and get drinks. If you drink too much, of course, you're expected to get drunk. And we wanted, as the coders, we wanted to add this layer into the game. And so as you slowly drink and you slowly get drunk, you pass out. And like we've said before, there are time slots. If you get passed out drunk, you lose time. Instead of waking up in the morning, you wake up later on in the day and you've lost time. And of course, since our game is based around managing your time and that strategy, it's, even though it might be cool to see from a writing standpoint, it, as a player playing the game, it might not be something you want to do. These things give pop to the game. It's meant to be this fun thing, even though it might seem minuscule. Like Michelle said earlier, the very first way we've done this was if you try and go to Natalie's bar during the day, Rosie will tell you, well, you can't go there. And so as you choose that option, Rosie tells you no, and the game has to spit out the option of choose it again. Here's all the options again. And if you try and kind of poke fun at Rosie and say, no, I want to go to the bar now, Rosie will slowly get more annoyed with you because you're still poking, I want to go there. And that adds that extra layer of immersion. And so eventually when Rosie will get fed up, she'll be like, no, and the option will completely disappear. And that's that layer of juiciness that we wanted. And this was getting that right is quite difficult because we need cohesion with our coders and our writers. And so as our writers were developing, they gave us the material to work with. And the coders saw this and we put it in the game and we're like, well, we can do a little more with this. And so we gave message to our writers and said, can you add these specific dialogue options to give this juiciness to our game? And so that was kind of this cycle loop of just writers would write, the coders would receive it, code it in, give requests, and just this loop, and it created so many cool parts to our game. Next slide. Of course, even though we have a lot of cool things in our game, we had our fair share of issues when it came to writing, playtesting, basically everything. For the coders, one of the biggest issues was we had to test to make sure the game works. We had so many times where changing one little thing made the map disappear. And we were like, well, what happened? Where did it go? So we had to go back in and check, okay, this, whatever we just did, take that out, remove it and check what did it do. Like it shows on the slide, nothing worked first try. We had so many instances where we had things like that. Icons wouldn't be working. The item that should be movable on screen was stuck in place. Or even though when you move the item, when you let go of the mouse, the thing would bounce right back to its starting position. And we had so many issues with that, but it was a lot of fun trying to get to work around them. The other thing that was quite difficult to work with was the writers and the coders. Even though we did work well together, that was also not without issue. Sometimes what happened was Fungus itself, the program, doesn't have a spell check or a grammar check, and sometimes things will get by, and there's no indicator until we started playtesting and realized, well, Natalie's name is missing an A there, or Shannon's name is not appearing at all. Like, what's going on? Or the C in front of his name was lowercase in where it shouldn't be. The other issue, Britney and Michelle can attest to this, we had a lot of trouble with Shannon in the very first instance of writing his character, because when it came to interacting with your player character, the main character, some of the dialogue would seem rather unnatural. Like, our main character would be talking about something and the response would come back as not fluid. And so we had to work around those things. The other thing that mostly on the coding side that we had issues with was old content versus new content. And that's because we were building this game over months, from ever since March or April. And because our writing skills and our coding skills was growing over time, we had a lot of issues with the code and writing that was very first implemented in the game. So we had things like, for example, in one scene, instead of having a blank space where the player's name is supposed to be, it would be underlines, like just like 6 underlines there. And of course, that was before we could figure out how to input a name system. And so we had to go back and check and make sure that all of these places are coded properly and written properly, because it would be extremely obvious that something is going on here that shouldn't be. Now, when it comes to coding, our biggest issue, especially since we weren't meeting in person, we were meeting through Discord, we had to use this site called GitHub, which essentially is this place where we can all upload the coding to it, and we can retrieve it once it's all updated. And so we can work off of the same platform without having to meet in person. The biggest issue with that, though, was for some reason, we had this issue where if we uploaded, or if 2 different people were working on the same exact code and uploaded it, the GitHub would say that there's a conflict and you can't upload this here. And when we tried to say, oh, just delete what you've done and only one of us will upload it, it would come back as Steve it. There'd be nothing there, and be like, oh, do you still have it? And he would be like, no, it's not on my computer anymore. I uploaded it to GitHub, and it'd just be gone. And so we had to restart some scenes from the very start with nothing. And so on top of having, this could happen with newer content. So we would have, this scene would be coded in way early, like way early into development. But we screwed things up like a couple months later and it'd be gone. And everything would be updated past the point of, we can't just take what we had to do it from scratch. And it was pretty bad. I think in terms of all in all, I think even though we've had these issues, for the most part, we were able to work around them. There wasn't many issues that were glaring to the point where we had to stop completely. With our talented team of writers, coders, and artists, we were able to work around a lot of the big chunks of the issues, which created the game that you see right now.
Thank you, Jordan. Talking about the struggle that we went through these past few months.
Yeah.
All right. So that was, I mean, it's still a work in progress. We're still experiencing the problems and mistakes and coding errors still to this day. But our goals for the future, near future as well as far future, is that we're just going to continue game testing. Like Jordan said, we're still playing through all the games, finding all those spelling errors, finding all those places where players could break the game. And we're always going to constantly be editing it and updating it. And then soon enough, we're hoping that we can publish it on Steam, which is a game website to buy games, as well as some indie websites, and it'll be ready for commercial product soon enough. Yeah, that's our goals for the future. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our presentation, and we'll be here for Q&A now.
Yeah, so any questions for the team leaders of the group? You can type them in chat, or I don't know how this is gonna work.
Yeah, the chat is up. We can see if need be.
As we wait for your questions, I guess I can speak in general from my educator's perspective. I was totally shocked and surprised by what they were able to produce, because video game development, even though it's a child, like, teenager degenerate product, people, it has that stigma to it. It is definitely not a childish topic or practice. It is definitely not trivial. In fact, a cool little note is that the engineering experts, the software engineering experts, they often consider this one of the two top most difficult and complex things to develop, especially like large-scale commercial successful games. The other being a full-fledged operating system. And we all know operating systems are the things that run all of our cell phones, tablets, computers. So that goes to show you that the magnitude of undertaking, like, oh, I'm gonna make a game. Yeah, it can be fun and quick, but like as you saw the process cycle, it balloons in complexity. Okay, so it looks amazing. I want to play it. When's it out?
Oh, is there a question?
Yeah, when's it out?
Well, it's still in progress. I would say it's in alpha.
In alpha.
Alpha. You could have a demo soon, maybe by winter.
Yeah, maybe December-ish, I think.
December release
maybe
for the demo.
Holiday season.
Yes, perfect time. You can get a little taste of
the
game for
yeah. There are still some tweaks that we need to do. There are some places that we need we're still missing some. We're still writing. But within the next couple of months, I think we can get something that's completely playable.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It looks incredibly labor intensive. Can any of these processes be automated?
Automated, huh?
You mean game development as automation?
That's
Roger,
quite.
that's a good. Roger, that is a good
Yeah.
point. With the advent of quantum computing and AI, advances,
Well,
there have been some experts like trying to do that.
I was thinking of AI in particular.
Yeah. AI so far has been able to produce like trivial games, you could say, like Pong, like Donkey Kong, things like that, the classics, Pac-Man. But when it comes to these large scale, like often, I'm not sure if you guys know, like the corporations like Electronic Arts, where the teams are like thousands. It's so far humans have the advantage of that, that subjective touch.
Right.
I think the closest we have actually to automation would be the Isaac template. Honestly, like we're using the code, but that's the closest we can get to it. Like it's not full, but it's like halfway partial kind of automation.
In terms of actual automation, other than like copy paste, there are games like AI Dungeon that use AI to kind of analyze what a player is doing and kind of spit out possibility. The only thing is that when it comes to that, there's nothing that's definitive. It's quite random, and you might not get, in terms of writing, you might get something that's completely unbelievable. Like I've seen some AI dungeon players, they've done they tried to play and it spits out very bizarre situations that aren't very realistic at all. You get something like ordering pizza through like a medieval guard or something. It's something very, very bizarre. So it is possible, I would say. It's just not in terms of something that would be structured.
Yeah, Roger, to address your coding specific question about the AI, there have been like MIT and like, the creative labs, the media labs over there, they have been trying to like, I guess you could say, be the forerunners of this, like having AI actually code. Like they teach it the semantics and the logic and then let it try to produce. So far, mixed results, but it is making advancements. If that's what you're going with.
I was also thinking that AI could be used to test and find errors quicker than you can.
Roger, I never even thought about that
yes.
perspective. I haven't even thought about that perspective, Roger. Like create a bot, like a player bot, to go to your game and list the errors
and test things. Yeah, that I think is a lot more possible than actually like building a game. In terms of like finding errors, AI would be more likely used for that purpose. The coding programs already kind of have something like that, where there's a panel in the coding program that tells you when something is conflicting, like extremely conflicting, where it'll stop the game completely and say that this is broken. You can't be doing this because it's conflicting so badly that the game needs to be stopped for it to undo that process. Other than that, I think in terms of finding errors, yeah, I think AI would be a lot more useful in terms of error finding versus actual building games.
I was particularly impressed by the level of the skills involved that you had available to you.
Thank you so much.
Writing to the coding to everything else. Do you learn that at ACM, or did you come to ACM with those skills?
Everybody answer.
It's
Both, technically.
It's a little bit of both, I would say. For
We
the
came in
most
with raw
part,
skills and talents,
yeah.
but then the program kind of refined it. So we came in having an idea of how to do things, but professors kind of told us, okay, let's take what you know and refine it. Let's make it better. Let's take what you know and challenge you to make this better. So we came in knowing some things and how to do like art, writing, coding, a little bit of code. And then our professors like Davin over here taught us how to take it further, how to put it into a game, how to make it stand out, how to make it move and work. So it's a little mixture of both.
Yeah. Before getting in the ACM program, I only understood coding at like a very casual level, like just like any other person on the street. It's like things are working underneath what I see and they're making all the things work. But I've taken a few classes and a lot of classes where I get to see the inner working, and through Davin's help and my other professors' help, we kind of refine that. I think all three of us and our other classmates, we've been playing video games for quite a long time, and we kind of have an understanding of what goes into a game, how things work. The others are more better. Some of us are, of course, more specialized in art, writing, and of course, coding. We get to see a lot of different perspectives on that, and ACM really did help us through. Like, if I'm being honest, this type of coding we have never done at all. My personal self, I haven't done anything this complicated before this year. Like just this year, we were able to figure out all these complex things. Like just last semester, this semester, and over the summer.
So by actually doing a project, you accelerate your skills.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, very
Learning
much.
by doing.
Yeah.
So there's a question from Ariana in the chat. She says, "Are you guys planning on pursuing game design as a career? If so, would you want to stay in visual novel or get out?"
It is our concentration, but we would probably want to expand to different genres. While this is our very first game in the visual novel genre, we do want to do other things like platformers, 3D, FPS. So this is the stepping point onto bigger things. But yes.
Yeah, I think as a game developer, knowing how to do a wide range of things, especially when it comes to different game genres, is very important. I think every single one of us in our class, we have our own favorite type of genre, and we fit the whole wide bill of it. We like things from visual novels to dating sims to FPSs to platformers to RPGs, and we have all of this knowledge, and we kind of put them all together here, and we kind of see it being brought forth in our game. But yes, definitely, I think I would like to see other genres. It's just with the skills that I have right now, visual novel and dating sim is the one of the only ones that I can properly code.
You're being honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's we've tried other things, and it's quite difficult to do other types of coding, especially with different languages in the code. There's just because, like, I think one thing that most people, myself included, when I started coding was you kind of don't understand that there are different languages to code. There's C++, Python, and these, even though these names sound bizarre, it's like, it means that there's different ways to structure code and different ways to type them and write them, and it's very different. And I think it's probably one of the more scary things to try and pick up.
Michelle, how about you? You're gonna try at first you didn't want to be a game developer.
I honestly wasn't even supposed to be in game dev 2 class. But from my perspective, I was a writer, but I was also the project manager. So getting everybody organized in class, as well as planning out what to do next class, some deadlines to set, that was all just a really great learning experience as well, just to go through that and like realize that it's okay to give people some extra time to get their project done. I'd rather, me as a person, I'd rather have it a really nice, refined thing versus a super rushed thing. So even like when we were done with it at the end of the semester, we had a lot of some of our sketch art still in as placeholders in the background. But then, we told everyone that, we were going to work on it during the summer. And during the summer, we were able to have Britney take over for background art. And then that's when she was able to use her skill set and bring the backgrounds back to life, and they look amazing.
Well, I have my background in actually interior design, so that's how I could make the 3D render. So I know how to use programs like Revit and SketchUp, but I never had to make an actual environment where a living person wouldn't be in it, but it would be a characterized person. So that was a new experience to make a 3D rendered environment, but not for a living, breathing person, but for your character who's on the screen for a few minutes at a time. So that was a fun thing to do. Also, see we have some Q&A down there too.
Yeah, in the Q&A.
I don't see them. You guys read them.
Okay, yeah, Donna asked, what was your favorite part of doing this game? Oh, would you answer a different one?
Oh.
Be honest, it's collectively.
Writing Isaac.
It was the
brainstorming. No, not the brainstorming.
It was the yes, Roger.
Question.
Yes.
In a school year, are there several of these projects going on simultaneously, or was this it?
For this particular class, I made them do just to warm them up, from the first week on to maybe the the fourth week. It was a little baby games, kind of showing them example how to. I would do a walkthrough, and then I said, because oftentimes video game making is taught as a cookie cutter style, right? Here's a recipe sheet. We're all gonna bake, roast turkey. And everybody's roast turkey tastes the same. I wanted them to kind of express their own creativity, right? And the challenge of that is that I don't know what they're going to come up with, right? So there's no set step-by-step manual to how to make the game that they're thinking of. So usually I would give a warm up and then make a big chunk of the ending of the semester to be okay, you guys got one game to make, do me proud. and then they would come, they would use it all the time.
Yeah.
So at this point, the classes are pretty small.
This one was relatively small. Yeah, within 15,
maybe
less than 20.
Yeah, definitely less than 20. It was maybe 15-ish, I think.
I'd say 15 or 14 because it kind of counts on people who actually worked on this project. Since some people left a little early.
This semester was 11, I think.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and then maybe active people actively working maybe down 5.
Yeah, a lot of us were quite busy with other classes and other real life things.
Yeah.
Yes, Roger. Is that it?
Where's the Q&A? I don't see it.
I see it right here. I can actually
the
next
on the
one.
bottom.
The other one was are any of you hoping
chat.
to continue with video game design? I think we answered that a little bit earlier about game design.
Yeah.
And then the other
Yeah.
one, this one was accidentally answered, I think. Good job, guys, from Ammo. My question is on the creative media programming UHW. I was interested in looking into
Oh.
transferring after graduation and another CC. How's the audio team? Have you collaborated with the sound makers to make music in the background for your games? Fun fact, I did that.
Yeah,
But,
Brittany is audio engineer.
I composed it. So I think it's about our program. You learn everything. If you're concentrating in something, you're still going to learn how to use a camera. You're still going to learn how to use audio. We have a Foley lab in our
Oh yeah, yeah,
UHS.
yeah.
You can make your own sound effects in that lab.
Yeah.
So,
Was it
oh,
just
Charlotte.
Oh, there.
was it
Shala.
just this last?
Wait, Jordan, Shala, the head
Oh,
of the program,
okay.
she
Hold
says,
on.
if you have any curriculum-specific questions, please reach out formally to Hanaoka@hawaii.edu. And she,
Yeah.
and she can answer. She's the lead.
Yeah. She will give you a lot of extra information on what's in your
Yeah,
program.
we have
but
to thank
basically, you learn
a lot of the ACM program. The new building has a lot of fancy tech now, and we've just recently seen just this semester, right there, we've seen like the Foley room, the audio room, the crazy stuff.
I have one final question for me.
Yes, sir.
Do any of you change your specialty during the year?
Oh, that's a good question.
Will we change our specialty? Or have we changed?
If you're a writer, have you gone on to do coding? Or if you're a coder, have you gone on to do writing or art?
I probably could, if I would change it, maybe writing. I've done a little bit of writing for our game, but only like a little bit. If anything, I have the ability to kind of edit. Like I said, I was one of the editors, and I was checking for how the character dialogue flowed, and I think I could do writing in that kind of sense.
How about you, Michelle?
For me,
sorry.
I think if I were to go from writer, I would go into art. I saw these assets that we had to create, and they all look super cool and super fun. And I was part of that like small board of 4 people that first came up with Rosie's design. So it was just like a lot of fun coming up with concept art and just collaborating with all my friends, coming up with these ideas and stuff. Brittany?
For me, I did 3 things. I did writing, art, and composing. So the only one I didn't touch on yet at all was coding. So that's probably my weaker asset. So I would definitely be a coder next time around to see what I can do, what I can put together that's outside of the creative realm, like outside of like composing or writing or drawing. It's just something that's out of my comfort zone and make something actually work.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is coding is a very strict kind of thing where it needs to work this way or else it's going to be breaking things. And I think a lot of people are very hesitant when it comes to coding because it's like it feels restrictive. It's like, well, I want to be creative there's really not much creativity when it comes to coding other than you need some kind of other background in art or writing to do so, to bring life to coding other than just lines of code or blocks and things like that.
I agree.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question, Roger?
Yeah, Davin, we probably better wrap up.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're done. So thank you for everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed this. I mean, my students were looking forward to the opportunity to vent out their postmortem. But
Oh
yes,
my goodness.
there's some closure to this whole process now. Okay, guys. Alrighty. So thank you for coming and supporting, all of us in the ACM program.
We will try to get it out by
And thank you
December.
so much.
We will have a demo.
Thank you, Roger, for this opportunity too.
I just have one last comment. The previous show had 3 finished products that were presented, animation and video,
Mhm.
and they referred to all the elements that were involved, but you never got to see them the way we did in this.
Wow.
So I think you've got a really good model for making a Zoom session interesting.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I'm not watching
We good.
television.
Thank you.
I'm not watching a television or something. No, And so
Oh,
that tells me that next time we do the animation and film, it really should do it with one project and everybody involved in that project
no, yes.
be present. So
Thank
I
you for the
think
compliment. Thank you for the compliment.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I don't know how this will end, but thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for